if it'll do it again.
Oh, awesome.
Just
Hello,
got it.
everyone.
Did it just start?
We're live.
Yeah. There it goes for me. Hi. How's everyone doing?
Hi.
We're live. We tell them about the new um podcast series. Well, not podcast series, the new approach, versatile approach.
Yeah, so it is. I mean, we recorded a series that we're releasing every Monday um evening to mirror after the first one, and then we're going to be doing these uh check-in meetings where people can, join in, where we're just going to be talking about the news that is affecting us globally, locally, all of those fun things. So that's it.
Woohoo. Awesome. The first big major news that I think affects most of us, all of us, perhaps. Mary, bring it on.
So Maine just dropped a huge legislation bomb. The governor, Janet Mills, she signed into law a bill that partially decriminalizes prostitution. Um, a lot of people are kind of frustrated by the bill because it still keeps buying sex illegal. So buying sex is still criminalized. However, it is not a criminal offense to sell sex. So the worker is not a criminal at this point, but the customer could be. And I say could be because sometimes prostitution laws face some trouble when they actually get to the prosecution part of it, but that's a whole other topic. The bill was sponsored by Lois Reckitt, and she, for a long time, was a big advocate for women who suffered domestic violence, and she was a really big advocate for sex trafficking victims. So I think the major goal of this law is to stop the prosecution of sex trafficking victims. We've seen, Centoya Brown, Crystal Kaiser, and other legit trafficking victims spend years in prison um, for defending themselves. And this is like a huge problem among a lot of minorities who engage in sex work or who are sex trafficked. When they try to free themselves, they're prosecuted. So I think that this bill has some good intentions, but I think that we still have a really far way to go till we get to full decrim. But I'm not mad at, the half step forward that this takes. I think this is opening up a lot of conversation. I think this is a good way to show other states and to kind of set a precedence that selling sex is a job. There's a lot of victimization still in the law itself that I'm kind of bothered by, but I think overall it is a step forward.
Well, and hopefully people get access to this information and opens up the conversation. And it's a model to show a healthier way to do it. I know we were talking before about how lawmakers, are dealing with the red tape of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of bullshit bureaucracy. So to get things done in a democracy, it's really slow moving. So yes, it's a huge win, right? With this in this type of system that criminalizes sex in general. In a lot of places, it's still illegal to give your husband a blowjob, right? I mean, these laws are like put in and never changed, and we have to go through all of these other things to take that away. So I do like to hear that they're making a law that is showing a principle that in a supply and demand culture, the supply is not the problem. It's like the way it's being demanded.
Yeah, I think this goal, like one of the goals listed in the reason behind the legislation was they're trying to they consider like pimping obviously to be illegal still, which it should be. So this is kind of a weird way of trying to keep pimping out of sex work. But I don't think that this is necessarily the way to go about that. Obviously, providing more resources.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do not mean to cut you off, but I'm trying to make that connection because I'm learning a lot about this subject myself. So how's the law how does it have to do with pimps?
So they basically feel like by saying that the seller, and this is sort of my interpretation of things that I've heard both the lawmakers and supporters of the law say. So here's a quote from Wreckage. She says, "We are long overdue to better protect and decriminalize sellers engaging in prostitution without legalizing pimping and sex buying." So I think what this law aims to do is to end demand in a way, and
Sure.
that's not really effective at all because this law will absolutely not end demand. And the problem with end demand is then you're not really protecting the sellers because then they're out of a job.
Chewable Viagra and abstinence, they go so well together.
Exactly. So it's definitely a very American way of approaching sex work, right? It's like this underhanded, like kind of, sneak prudish shit that's disguised and we're protecting women, we're protecting minorities, but they're really not. And while I do think that, like I said, the law has good intention, I'm not really sure how it's going to translate. I think it does bring up a lot of good conversations. And I hope that it means that we're moving in a forward direction because, before we had full legalization of marijuana, we had medical marijuana, right? So I feel like you said, in a democracy, it's fucking baby steps to get
But
to real.
look at what happened. I don't, it's the Sabbath, so I love to put this phrase on the table, this secular phrase on the table. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So yeah, we are all celebrating the decriminalization of marijuana for the right principles and purposes because it always should have been that way. However,
Right.
look at the damage and the trauma it's done to our country, especially the black-bodied males and everyone in the community, right? But I'm talking about who got plucked out for dime bags and thrown into our prison systems to make fucking rich people more money. Pardon my language, but
Yeah, obviously there's been no seamless decriminalization of anything in this country. And, as far as whenever a politician says they're aiming to protect the marginalized, I side-eye it a bit because it's well, there's a lot of steps that you have to get to that point, right? Because this is America. So, I mean, like I said, I'm not super mad about the whole thing. I do hope that it's the start of better things. But there's definitely a lot of flaws in it. There's a lot of holes in it. I don't think that end demand is a reality, and I don't think that it's helpful.
Well, we are fighting a lot of war right now with words. And again, education and changing the narrative of who the victim and the perpetrator is to put it in the proper place is important. And decriminalizing a sex worker is the obvious thing, the very least that anybody could do. I mean, protection hopefully will fall, like Drake says, 0 to 100 real quick. I am a firm believer that things can happen overnight. That's just who I am as a person. So that's my nature. But what else?
I wonder, so what other countries have implemented this style and what was it like for them as a result?
So this end demand, criminalizing the buyer and not decriminalizing the seller, is the Nordic model. So a lot of Nordic countries have this model. I'm not super sure about the history of it. I know it's not super effective. We all know that sex trafficking happens everywhere. Sex work is not sex trafficking. And there's very obvious differences between the two. And in my opinion, lawmakers should not have a hard time differentiating between them. And for some reason, they act like they do. And I think that's just a shield, right, of some continuing.
Can you tell us the difference between sex work and sex trafficking, please?
So sex trafficking is obviously someone is forced to do it. They're sometimes being forced by someone else. They're sometimes being forced by an organization. Pimping is considered sex trafficking, although I am the type of person who recognizes nuances in pimping, and having folks. I've been in the industry for a very long time, and I think that it's really weird to like automatically victimize people. However, obviously, if someone's being forced to do anything, that's wrong. And typically, when it comes to like online ads, which is where FOSTA SESTA started, right? They were like, okay, we're going to end sex trafficking by not allowing people to post ads anymore for sex work, which just sent everyone underground. So I feel like if you were, investigating sex trafficking, I mean, there are hallmarks to it, right? Usually the people are in a centralized location. Usually the people will say, yeah, I'm being trafficked at some point. There's usually a handler or someone else making the arrangements for that person. Which, I mean, if you go to a brothel in Reno, there's a madam, but that's obviously a completely different situation than some guy on a burner phone who's telling you the rates for someone else and dropping off, picking up, like all of these things. So there's hallmarks to it. I'm not an investigator, so I really can't
Sure.
that. But, and then, sex workers are just people doing a fucking job, and it's just not, the end demand is just not realistic. I wish I did have a better history of like Nordic model in action. Maybe we can save that for another time, because that would be interesting to kind of go into like how it actually works.
Well, and to see the quality and the health of the workers themselves. I mean, that is the ultimate goal. It's not realistic now to act like there's another way to pay our bills except to make money in the United States of America, especially. That's why I'm a huge advocate for like sex workers. Like, if you're trying to pay bills, and people are just coming at you for no reason, no good reason. And this is what, yeah, I would love to find out how the health of the workers themselves are, because ultimately that sounds out the vibration, like the clients are healthier, and then when you're able to communicate in a system where sex is out in the open instead of secretive and demonstrative and like demonized, it has shown time and time again that it's like healthier, in a way, that like secrets are, and the shame of it is like what keeps, a lot of people like traumatized. And our society right now is definitely in a mental health crisis, and sexuality is a hot topic in it. I know it.
I feel like in the next 20, 30 years, government will subsidize the industry, because it's just going to be one of many ways to, I don't know, relieve stress, meet people, and so on and so forth. I'm telling you.
That's what you think our government's going to do?
I hope so, because I mean, imagine if it's going to be a salary-based position
I listen to the young. I let the youth
plus
fill
bonuses.
my heart. That's where the optimism comes from, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
I would love to quit being re-traumatized, like that's the point. I think that like, of the approach of knowing like what the difference of like what humanity's nature is versus like what the nurture is, and like what the lack thereof, and what's important to society as a whole. And it feels like a lot sometimes, and like it's hard to know how capable we are as a system, especially now the Supreme Court is taking away our rights. And I'd like to play the advocate of the other side, which is saying, go ahead, because we know really subconsciously, at least as a society, that power of purchase is everything. And all we have to do is shift our power of purchase to buying bare necessities over what they're producing and saying as necessities as these commodities. And you shut down the government, right? Stop playing the lottery. Do a lotto strike and see what happens, please. You can ask for anything you want. The government, every single one of them, Republican, Democrat, they'd all be begging you to do whatever it takes to give them back that money. And all we would have to do is funnel it into a different avenue, into different things, we're doing this video from Michigan and like Detroit area. And I at a meeting recently, and I found out that our mayor is funneling money out of the Detroit Public Library to speak on like some local news. And, I'm just like in my mind wondering why this man is still our mayor. Because Detroit deserves a black mayor. And, this is what is on my mind recently, especially over the weekend. So, we're talking about lawmakers and policymakers and how these things affect what is representing us, right? Our lawmakers is representing us to the rest of the world. And are they communicating what we actually need, or are we too tired to even get up and tell them what we want and what we need and how we need it?
Different approaches. I've seen both, meaning that people advocate and move the ideas, and I've seen people that were just hushed down and escorted out of the mayor's office. So it's a gamble.
Well, and again, that's why I think it's interesting. And whatever. I can't sit here and talk about how I voted for our mayor twice. I voted for Kwame twice, because I am a staunch Democrat, and I do know that we're playing a game, and that's what politics is. And I want to win. And the thing I want to win is equality for all, human rights, justice for all, all these things that are said in this language that was written. I don't give a fuck who was written by. Have somebody else sing the song and I'm fine. We'll tune into that. Like, we'll do the Taylor Swift model. Good. You wrote the fucking Constitution. Now we have it. And you can either listen to our version of it or you can buy that asshole's version of it. But this is what we're selling now. And, I know that being so plugged into social media as a system, and, this is a big topic. This Threads thing just came out. I put it on my phone because it's just, as somebody that works in a POS system industry, I like pushing buttons. It brings me joy. And at my job, it brings me money. So I'm good at it and it's easy for me to do. And I'm like, oh, colors. Oh, yep. Mm-hmm. And I can't say that social media has never affected my mental health. It 100% has. But when I look at it as like what it is and I take, the other things out of it, it's that, it's colors and buttons. There's people in an office being like, well, what color are these people going to push? And it's somebody getting a job, right? And it's a lot of, Gen Xers and millennials still being like relevant creatives and making a lot of money for it in the tech world. Good for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, did either of you download that app?
Yeah.
I have.
You have or haven't?
What bothers me is that you get a number of what millionth person you were registered as. What does that have to do?
What's the social security number? What's all the numbers? I mean, that's how the code is being made. That's how everything's being tracked.
I mean, like, logically, what would that?
Numbers in general, like, I'm never going to be scared of any of them for any reason. I mean, unless it's like my fucking prison number, but that's the system that we're fighting. It's effective. It works in there, but we don't want, it's effective. It's how we know how to plant seeds. It's how we know how to, like, it's a human evolutionary, like, a phenomenon, that again, sometimes gets misused. I was disappointed that my number didn't mean anything like interesting in social context of like, I didn't get like 420 or 69 or 666 like I was hoping. I can tell you that was a big bummer.
Mary, why didn't you download it? Do you plan on having it?
I didn't, just because I really only use Instagram. I mean, sometimes I'll post on Facebook, like post and ghost, but I just don't really have the attention span for multiple social media pages.
You have life, in other words.
No, it's just honestly, it just seems like, I don't know. I usually The Twitter format is really confusing to me, and I guess if it's like another Twitter format, I'm like, I don't want to deal with that.
I see. And like you can't really delete it. Once you created it, the only way to delete it is your Instagram and Threads. You can't just
I
delete
can
it.
tell you it's 100% different than Twitter. I can tell you in an organizational anthropological like point of view that it is wild how they brought the same feeling of Instagram there. Like it's nothing like the Twitter format. Nothing.
Really? Maybe I will.
No, it's like words. So you know how Instagram started and it was only visuals?
Yeah.
And how therapeutic that was?
Yeah.
Well, this is like that right now. I can't say how things are going to change. Again, you know, the road to hell are paved in good intentions. But right now, it's like that feeling, but with words and phrases, right? So it's like actually the armchair therapy taken out and like friends talking to each other again, saying like right now it's very positive on there because people are very aware that we're fighting a economic and social in warfare. And usually the side I'm on and the people I know and the networks and the algorithms I go to are like champions of like love and hope. So there's a lot of that going on.
Maybe I'll check it out. I've seen like people.
I'm not saying one or the other, but I'm just letting you know that's how I feel.
Veronica gets paid to promote it.
No, I don't want anybody. The second more than like two people start like listening to me and like my ideas, I'm like, no, don't listen to me. I'm trying to tell you my nature and nurture is so unraveling. Like, find out your own, please. Please. Have fun with it. Have fun with it like I've gotten to. Go to the fucking darkest corners.
I have seen people posting the Fox News article every 2 seconds about how Threads is like, oh, they're just purging our data. And I'm like, what are they going to see that I search for fucking cat videos?
My oldest brother, proudly served in the U.S. military in the Navy, and he, was a yeoman, on the USS Enterprise, right? Big deal. Very impressive coming from where we came from. And he told me a long time ago, and this was, you know, I mean, he was like 19, right? So whatever, the 90s. He's like, we can read a postage stamp from anywhere in the US. That's how high intelligence are. So I never, after hearing that, you're like, how are you going to get scared? You can't. It's already happening. And,
Yeah.
you know, what do they, unless they know what to do with the data, which is what we're trying to do, show that you don't have to mismanage data. Anthropologists, like nobody hires anthropologists. Lawmakers certainly don't.
Nope.
They're not really interested in how to help.
I would have to say that politicians start out with good intentions.
Well,
And the system is so fucked. Pardon my twice. I get 2 swear words on Sunday being recorded. But they, you know, again, it's a hard job. And how are you supposed to manage your mental health in your life and all of these other things when the job itself is that demanding? And a lot of it is fundraising, right? And like where you get your money and how, and you know, the red tapes and the election cycles and all of these other things. And I don't have the answers to any of that. I actually did not study political science. I was with somebody for a very long time that did. So I accidentally, through osmosis, know more about it than I ever would have. But,
Well, I think the Snowden situation showed us really what the surveillance is about in this country and what whistleblowing means in this country. So yeah, Fox can go and enjoy themselves.
all news outlets, right? Like I am still kind of shook that we're not taught to filter our information better, to know they're selling us. Like the information is not just for this do good purpose. That's why gossip and word of mouth is way more powerful than anything we'll ever get. That has to go from me to you up to a satellite to anywhere. This is
News is entertainment. You know, just the book that you shared recently with me, News is just another form of entertainment coded into news.
Mhm.
You know, not surveillance, sensationalism, gossip, still bestsellers. And newsrooms will publish things that will get the most traffic. That's how they get paid. So it's just a vicious cycle of, who's getting paid, who's getting the word out.
Yeah.
Something new, yeah. So sad story, but thanks, politician, for doing amazing work, for sugarcoating things and not making any progress.
Well, it's like performatives are important because that's what gets them in office. And how are they going to do what they set out to do if they're not still elected? And people only respond to performatives. They only respond to it. So,
Mary, be a politician. I would vote for you.
who are you telling to do that, Mary?
Yeah,
I'll vote for Mary. Yeah,
I'll vote for
100%.
Mary.
Run for president.
I wish I had the fundraising
I mean,
capacity.
you have the name of Jesus's mother. To me, that could go pretty far. Just that right now in our society.
Oh yeah, I Reformed whore
Yeah,
approach.
well, we're in Medusa. Duh, I'm right. Like, of course, of course, that's what we are, Siren.
And
Luscious
it's
to kill you.
right.
Sunday trauma. Obviously, somebody spent some time in some fucking born again Christian churches, please.
I only
But
have to speak of.
what happened?
I said I only have the Catholic religious trauma to
Oh,
speak of.
I both. I did both. I mean, I was named oddly enough after the Saint Veronica because my dad did not grow up in the Catholic Church, but my mom did. So when you know my dad went along with those systems, like the marriage was there and like the baptisms or that's what they're christenings or whatever when they like sprinkle the water on the white dress baby. Um, But when they were doing that, there was a plaque at the church, and the name Veronica was on there, and he always liked like the Archie comic and the wildflower. So it's the saint's name. It's one of those things that sometimes baffles me because the saint herself and like the reaction that happens in me, I'm just like uncanny. It's a wonder.
I remember Veronica was the person that washed Jesus, and
Yeah, this is the
people.
only one that would like go up and like,
Yeah,
try to provide him any comfort because at that time, and understandably so, it still happens today in culture. And that's why I'm not, I am a writer. Nobody in any type of literary anywhere is going to dismiss that the Bible is not a collection of amazing stories and helps us plug things into history that got burned and, whatever else they did with the actual information and knowledge. Um, So yeah, that like is the story though. Who knows if that's true or not, but the saint itself and the Catholic religions anyways, like wiped the feet of Jesus and then the cloth came out. Really it was probably just like made up somewhere along the line where a church was broken. They were like, well, we have this cloth. What can we do? Like, let's make saints. We can sell the cloth of Jesus' face to somebody and get another year of criminal activity. Sorry, Catholic Church. Cheers. Nobody's hate.
yeah.
And how did you grow up Catholic? Or wait, did you go to church when you were growing up, Sonia?
Ooh. So in Russia or Ukraine, we used to have Orthodox Christianity. So this is like the religion where like you have to submit and cry and like wear, a hat when you go in, long skirt, you cannot show your feet, you cannot show your shoulders. And yeah, I was baptized as a kid, but for us it was more like a culture than a religion that you had to follow. So I don't know. It's just
That's
it.
what religion is. Religion is completely made up, right? Because like God is like never in any of the text. The idea and concept itself is so outside of brick and mortar that the fact that they figured out how to make a business out of it is so human nature. It is disgusting. Like,
My friend just got married in church that cost him 2,500 for a ceremony. where it should be for free, right?
That's reasonable. I mean,
I guess it's for free because we're all God's servants and stuff.
well, you can't exist. It's like anything, right? We live in capitalism. I'm not going to like blame a church for being part of a community and trying to like do good. I don't know how to even get into that because, again, as an anthropologist, like people do better believing in spirituality for like whatever reasons, and especially if they have the freedom to do it. And that's a luxury
Yeah.
that not a lot of people have, or not some people have. I don't know how to say that right now, because it's a new thought. But it's that like you have to have money to do anything in the society. It's the same thing with sex. Like, why isn't it free? That is what the people arguing against sex workers are arguing. Well, it should be between two people that love each other, right? Okay. Well, then figure out a different type of economic social system, because since the banana leaf bundles, which is the first type of currency, we've somehow figured out how to make things easier by making them harder through currency, right? Like there's something in humans that like drives us, and money in exchange or any type of reciprocity has always been like important in it. Like that's why, like I don't want to give you sex for free. However, I would have sex with you for money. Okay. I mean, why it should be that simple, because we live in the United States of America, and like as long as it's like healthy and like okay, how much? Well, this much sounds worth it to suck your dick because you're such an whatever. I'm putting a narrative and a spin on it and making light of it because I only have imagination to do that. Nobody would pay me, maybe, but they shouldn't. I don't know.
Well,
Leave it to the professionals. That's what I would say. Just like therapy or anything else. I can make you a great cocktail, and I can throw a hell of a party.
there you go.
I can write you a haiku or a love letter.
And you can write a nice script.
I can write nice scripts.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
That's it. It's all about,
Feasible skills.
channeling being an extrovert instead of being like hunted for it. Even like emotionally and internally. I think you grow up in society as like an extrovert. Like, I mean, I know that like I'm annoying to people, especially when they're trying to be in their zen and peace. And it is something that like I've learned over the years through like therapeutic ways to get those social cues to come to a common place with it, because there's a place for everybody, right? Even an extrovert. So to stop like self-loathing, it's one of those interesting things to learn how to channel it better. My lesson.
This is going to be an interesting topic for next time, I feel
I'm
like.
excited. So Mondays, let's talk about, as somebody the other day, it's funny, just asked me, what excites you? I'm like, the answer I gave was so nihilistic. Now I'm just like, I'm so excited about this. But 'cause I didn't have an answer at the time. It's tough. But we're
Yeah.
going to be releasing our series Mondays on Spotify.
And that's all we know as of now. And
As
that
far as
we'll
we're
say,
going to let you watch this and hope you enjoy some of it. I'm sure we enjoyed it, right?
yeah, right? That's all that matters.
I mean, uncovering like re-nurturing yourself in a society that's gone mad is a celebration. So this, compared to what I thought was supposed to be, especially talking about like religion and like what's current and what's relevant, is much better. Things are much better than I thought.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And keep up the good work, lawmakers. I'll try to get everybody to vote. I mean, I have no problem getting somebody to vote it out of office or in office, like, and because I do feel like, our representatives represent us, and I do want to be, it's too late. Globalization already happened, so there's nothing left to do but to make it a healthier system.
Yeah, I agree with that. Continuing to push for full decrim.
hmm So that's it. All right.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Ooh. Bye.
Mary disappeared.